I eventually discovered that this one thing would always give me wet dreams, and if I was to prevent it, I never had wet dreams. What's up, guys? I'm Jonathan White. I'm here to help you master your sexual energy so you can manifest your ideal life. If you want to learn more about sexual mastery, make sure you subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to stay notified when I release new videos and go live. Make sure you get my free ejaculation control course through the link in the video description below. Got a real sticky one for you today, guys, so to speak. Do you or does someone you know suffer from wet dreams, nocturnal emissions, waking up stuck and glued to your sheets? If you're watching this video right now, then chances are you're having wet dreams and you're feeling a bit frustrated about it. Now, especially in the context of semen retention, this could be a very frustrating and a bit embarrassing thing, right? This was initially for me what I felt was one of the biggest barriers in my practice of semen retention because, I'd go for weeks and be feeling great and then I'd have one wet dream and feel like I lost it all, right? So I'm gonna really break down what I found to be the main causes of wet dreams, as well as some other subtle things you probably never heard of before. And then I'm going to share what I found to be the most effective remedies for preventing wet dreams. And if you stick around to the end, you hear some of my most embarrassing stories about wet dreams, including the wet dream that cost me $50. So make sure you stick around for that. Let's dive in. So first of all, what are the main causes of wet dreams for men? The number one thing is unresolved sexual desire and sexual tension, we could say. Now, there's many subcategories of this, which I'm going to get into, but basically you're really horny. You're having all these sexual thoughts, maybe you've seen like sexually stimulating imagery, and that creates this strong desire in your body to have sex, have an orgasm. This sex drive feels incomplete. So as soon as you go to sleep, your subconscious mind's like, hey, this stupid asshole fell asleep. He won't let us have any pleasure. Let's have an orgasm. Let's make a nice, sexy dream and just come all over the place. And that's what happens, right? Isn't it like the weirdest feeling in the world when you wake up just ejaculating? Like personally, I find it extremely uncomfortable because especially for me, I feel like whenever I've had a wet dream, it's always just it's a very strange dream. It's usually not like a super enjoyable, really sexy dream. It's just like a really almost inappropriate situation that all of a sudden I'm just ejaculating and I wake up, it's like, oh, fuck, it doesn't feel very good. So one of the most important things here in sexual kung fu is learning to bring your arousal to completion, so to speak. What do I mean by this? This is a bit of an advanced concept, to be honest, but basically when you're aroused, when you're horny, we could say even like sexually frustrated, all of this sexual energy, this desire, this nervous system electricity is built up in your genitals and it needs to move somewhere. Otherwise, you can just think of it as like a spring being loaded till it can't hold any more tension. It snaps, which is your prostate spasming to release that pressure and ejaculating. So that's one of the main causes. And I'm gonna get into the remedies for these here in the next section. Another very common cause, and this directly ties into the arousal thing I was just talking about, is having a lot of tension in the pelvic floor. And especially if you've been having like non-ejaculatory sexual stimulation, self-stimulation, or sex, this pressure tends to get built up in the pelvic floor. Basically the same thing as being aroused without completing it. You have all this tension in your pelvic floor, which is actually putting pressure on your prostate. The body often eventually just releases it through a nocturnal emission. And another potential cause of wet dreams is having a very full bladder. When your bladder's full, it's placing pressure against the prostate area, and that can create an increased chance of having wet dreams. So do your best to, not drink a ton of fluids before you go to bed, but often there's only so much you can do about this one. Now, the one thing for me that I found always would cause a wet dream, and if I could eliminate this, I never had wet dreams, is getting too hot at night. Anytime I've slept underneath like a really thick blanket, especially it seems to be a combination of heat and like the pressure of the blanket on the body. If I'm ever under a heavy blanket, for example, in the winter, sometimes it's really cold and I'm like, I'm fucking cold. I need to warm up. So I put a nice thick blanket on. Next thing you know, I wake up ejaculating all over it. After many months and years of this pattern, not like it was happening every day, but I started to notice this correlation of, when I have a thick blanket on, when I wake up hot and sweaty, there's often a wet dream involved. So I started to notice this. In fact, I have a term that I use, with my partner where I say, I can't use this blanket. That is a wet dream blanket. So she understands. Another potential cause of wet dreams in Chinese medicine, this is often linked to kidney yin deficiency. And in fact, most people in the modern world suffer from a degree of kidney yin deficiency because we're all burning ourselves out in our, excess young lifestyle. It is what it is. But I recommend looking into a bit of kidney yin deficiency in Chinese medicine and just seeing what you can do to address this. If you read a lot of like Chinese medicine diagnosis, there's always a lot of talk about seminal emission. Like this will treat seminal emission. And honestly, I don't completely understand this. It's just like ejaculating all over the place must have been a big problem in China when they were developing Chinese medicine, right? It's probably not an accurate statement, but it really makes you wonder all this seminal emission going on. And the final cause is simply the sperm get old, they age, and the body must release them. Your sperm don't live forever. I know a lot of men practicing semen retention want to believe that the longer you go, the more mature the sperm get and the better your benefits come. And yes, there's a process process of maturation for the sperm, but eventually they die. What happens is you either reabsorb part of the nutrients from the sperm, the body releases some of them through urine, or they're released through a nocturnal emission. So in this case, it really is simply inevitable. It's like, your sperm are going to die. This is why I personally believe in cyclical ejaculations. If you find that no matter what you do, there's like a certain time period where you always have a wet dream, it may simply be that that is your time to release it. So, you can do it consciously and not wake up in the awkward, sticky mess. Okay, now we're gonna get into prevention. These are gonna be what I've found to be the most effective things in preventing wet dreams. Number one, stay cool at night, right? Sleep under lighter blankets, make sure you don't get too hot at night. Another thing I find very helpful is icing the testicles before sleep. Now, some people would say, well, I can take a cold shower before sleep. I used to do this a lot, but something I noticed was that if I would do like a really cold shower, an ice bath, it would make my body very cold. So I would get in bed and be like, fuck, I'm cold. And so I would really cover up with blankets. And then as my body warmed up, it gets way too hot because I put too many blankets on because I was in an excessively cold state and I'm ejaculating all over the place. So for this reason, I don't take cold showers right before going to bed. I take them earlier in the day, but I do ice my testicles before going to sleep, cooling them down, preventing that potential for overheating the balls and sticky sneeze in the middle of the night. Another potentially subtle thing, but something I found to be very effective was I noticed almost always when I had a wet dream, it was when I was laying on my back, sleeping on my back. I found that if I sleep on my side, it's much less likely for me to have a wet dream. And I think part of that is, again, maybe a bit of like pressure on the pelvis or like the sensation of the blanket on the pillow. I don't really know why. All I know is I sleep on my side, I'm less likely to ejaculate. Don't eat big meals before going to sleep. Don't drink a bunch of fluids before going to sleep. Don't watch porn, throughout the day. But the most important thing here, and I'm gonna break this down into a few different categories, is what I talked about earlier, releasing the incompletion of arousal in the body, channeling arousal, channeling sexual desire through the body so that it's not stuck in the genitals. Now, the most simple thing for this is using the microcosmic orbit practice. You move your energy through the microcosmic orbit. This helps to channel your sexual energy so that instead of all this pressure building up the genitals until it needs to explode out, you channel that throughout your body, releasing the pressure, releasing the urgency of sexual desire. When you get really good at transmuting your sexual energy through direct sexual practices, sexual kung fu, it will be a lot less likely for you to have a wet dream. And now a huge part of this is this tension built up in the genitals. This is another aspect as well, right? Channeling the sexual energy is great, but you can be doing this and still have a large degree of sexual tension in your pelvic floor, which can make it much more likely for you to have a wet dream. Something I've heard a lot of people report who've been through my courses and things is that they had non-ejaculatory sex. It was great, having lots of sex, not ejaculating at the end. And then after they go to sleep, they have a wet dream. And I think the most common cause for this is that this tension has built up in the pelvic floor. A few things are happening here. Number one, when you're really aroused, when you're having non-ejaculatory sex, self-stimulation, or really just in sex in general, before you ejaculate, what's happening is fluid is starting to build up in the prostate. Prostate fluid's building up in preparation for the impending ejaculation. If you don't release that pressure, the prostate's literally like swollen a little bit, and it basically causes you to feel this urgency to ejaculate, and you'll be much more likely to ejaculate when you have that state of tension and kind of built up fluid in the prostate. So this is why pelvic floor exercises are really important. The most important thing is preventing the tension, like the kind of squeezing response, feeling a lot of tension build up like it does when you're right on the edge of ejaculating. Preventing that from happening in the first place, which is a large part of the sexual kung fu work. Check out my top 4 exercises for pelvic floor tension for a daily routine to prevent this. But the other thing here is releasing some of that fluid in the prostate, which can be done with internal massage. Of course, you can directly massage the prostate. I know that makes a lot of guys squeamish, but the other alternative is to use a tennis ball. You place the tennis ball under your perineum, under the pelvic floor, between the balls and the butthole, sit on it where it goes up in the soft spot and just kind of move around on it, kind of grind around on it, and it will acupress and massage the prostate. Just a couple minutes, don't do much longer than that, and that will help to release the tension and the fluid, making it much less likely for you to have a wet dream. Basically, make sure you're really channeling that arousal out of your genitals, channeling that sexual excitement upwards in the body and out of the genitals so it does not explode in your sleep on you. And then the other subtle thing here is simply building your kidney yin. As I mentioned, kidney yin deficiency can be a component of wet dreams. So if you really build strong kidney energy, you will not have wet dreams, potentially. So look up how to do that. Now, I know a lot of guys get really tripped up about wet dreams. Again, follow the advice I've shared, do the things I've shared with you, and I guarantee this will be very, very helpful. But it still may not eliminate wet dreams 100% because, again, as I mentioned before, it's simply inevitable that at some point your sperm is going to die, gets old, and the body needs to flush it out. So if you're having like multiple wet dreams a week, that's definitely something to be concerned about. But if it's like, once a month, every 6 weeks or something, it's probably just your body telling you that it's time to ejaculate. So don't get into this like panic, obsessive, lack mindset around if I ejaculate ever, I'm gonna die. It's not that big of a deal. Smile, give your body some love, say thank you body for being sexually vital and being in the process of creating new sperm. Don't worry about it. Go about your day, eat some goji berries, you'll be fine. Okay, as promised, I'm gonna share some of my most embarrassing wet dream stories. I've got two good ones here. Number one day I had a wet dream and I was sleeping with my partner. We were kind of spooning and I literally woke up glued to her, and she woke up like, what the you know? And so it was a little embarrassing, but I was like, yeah, you know, what can I say? I ejaculated on you. But it was kind of that feeling of like, damn, I could have just done that during sex. It would have been a lot more enjoyable, right? The other one, this is the wet dream that cost me $50. So the year was 2020, March 2020. Actually, during the peak of the pandemic, I was in Phoenix, Arizona with my partner. We'd actually just been in LA when the pandemic started. Everything was shutting down. It's like, let's go somewhere where we can, like, you know, not be in this weird zombie apocalypse scenario. So we were in Phoenix, Arizona. We're staying in an Airbnb and basically had one of those thick wet dream comforters, and lo and behold, I woke up in a huge pile of my own semen. And you know, it was what it was. I didn't get too tripped up about it, but we got a message from the Airbnb host that said, hey, did you guys spill a milkshake in the bed or something like that? Because we washed it over and over and we cannot get this out. So we're gonna have to charge you $50 for it. So that wet dream cost me $50, my friends. All right, guys, thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I know there's a lot here, but you know, it's a deep subject, and based on the amount of questions I get about this, I know that a lot of men are struggling with this. So implement what I've shared with you. You'll see some good results, but don't get too tripped up about it, guys. Please give this video a like and let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your most embarrassing wet dream story, or let me know what you've done to prevent wet dreams. Have a good day, my friends.